Hello, Uriel from Ninja Bear Studio here. Welcome back. In this video, I want to talk about creating melee weapons, which is the next natural step when configuring ninja combat. We will create a couple of weapons, like a sword and a shield, we'll configure the initial combat components, and the weapon manager, and finally, we will test the setup. In the engine, the first step is to create a base weapon blueprint that will be used as a foundation for other weapons. This blueprint should inherit from Ninja Combat Weapon Actor, which is a class provided by the framework, implementing all the necessary interfaces for a weapon. It can be used for both melee and ranged weapons, and it also provides some properties that are useful when designing your weapons in the game. However, the base class does not have a mesh, since it won't assume if you're using skeletal or static meshes in your game. For now, I will only use static meshes, so I can create a static mesh component in this weapon, and then I should implement the appropriate interface method from the melee interface, so it will return my weapon mesh component. In this base weapon blueprint, I can also define basic properties that can be inherited by other concrete weapons. In this case, I am defining the weapon impact particles and the camera shake. These will be used whenever this weapon lands a melee hit. Next, we can take a look at our sword. As you can see, I have a mesh assigned to my predefined static mesh component, and I also added a Niagara component for my melee trails. This will be used in the next video when we're configuring the melee attacks. But I'll go ahead and add a Niagara system, and also implement yet another method from the melee interface, getAttackTrails, returning the Niagara component in an array. And now I will go to the sword properties, set the weapon tags that represent this weapon, in this case inventory, item type sword, and the specific impact sound. We are done with the sword for now, and we can move on to the shield. As you would expect, I have a weapon mesh set for the shield as well, a different tag, inventory, item type, shield, and also a specific sound for when the shield hits something. Next, we need to configure our combat components. So let's go to our player character. Here, the first thing to do is to add the combat manager component. You can do this in blueprints by searching for combat manager, or in C++ like I did, and you can find details about that in the documentation. Then, you need to implement the combat system interface, which can also be done in the blueprint or in C++, which is my case here. From this interface, we should implement the getCombatManager function, returning our Combat Manager component. I already implemented this in C++, so I'll just remove this for now. Next, we should add a Weapon Manager. Once again, this can be done in Blueprint, where you can search for Weapon Manager, or in C++, which is my case here. We should return this component in the getWeaponManager component function. But then again, I already have this in C++, so I'll just remove this for now. Now we can configure our Weapon Manager component. In that component, I already have the shield and the sword set as default weapons, and I am also mapping certain weapon classes to sockets in my character mesh. This way, whenever these weapons are instantiated, the Weapon Manager will attach them automatically. We are ready to run the game and test this setup. If I press play, I can see that those weapons are attached to the character, both the shield and the sword. But let me show you other ways to set weapons to the Weapon Manager. Let me remove the default weapons and show you some things that I can do in the blueprint graph. As an example, on begin play, I will add a weapon by class, in this case, the sword. I could also add a weapon instance if my object was already instantiated somewhere else. And if we test this now, the only weapon we'll have attached is the sword. Now back to our graph, I can also dynamically remove weapons. In this function, I can use a gameplay tag query, using the same tag that I used when I defined my weapon, inventory item type sword, like so. If I run the game now, I shouldn't have any weapons because I am adding them and removing right after. There you go. Now let me go back to the Weapon Manager and restore the original configuration, where I am granting both the sword and shield as default weapons. Let's run the game again and make sure that everything is back to normal. There you go. If you need to implement more complex behaviors in the weapon manager, you can either extend the current class or implement a brand new one following the interface. More details about that can be found in the documentation. And we will revisit this topic when we are configuring the Ninja inventory. This is it for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.